Good morning. Sorry, I'm a little late today. We had some technical difficulties. Um, how's everyone today? Let me just grab my coffee. That's been a little bit cold. So, you guys, today we're going to talk about the hospice fraud in California and just the perspective of, I guess, a nurse overall. This is an interesting one, and let me just start. It's interesting because I guess for something like this, for recording like this, obviously this is not, my forte. So I'm not very good with how fast we should go. But what I want to say is that I've actually have heard this even before this went big. I've heard of this already, that there is a fraud unfortunately happening. So I know that there is a lot of I guess fights between the two different main political parties, between Democrat and Republican, in terms of who should get the credit for the hospice fraud, because there's unfortunately a lot of them. Some people, I guess, surprisingly, some people still don't know about what's going on. But in reality, it's pretty big. They think that it's just a few millions here and there. But these are just from very small numbers of arrests. So it's interesting to see. And it's interesting to see how it all plays out. And I think sometime soon we're gonna see the numbers. And I'm for my calculation as a nurse, it will be staggering. I guess not just a nurse, but I guess let me clarify why I think that from a nurse's perspective. The reason behind that is that I think a lot of people don't are not very familiar with what hospice is, which is I guess a good thing. So let me just kind of clarify that. So hospice means end of life care. So according to the data, I've been researching the data. Let's see. So there's about, on average, about 270 to 290,000 deaths a year in California, right? So in terms of those deaths, it's kind of sad just saying it as a data. But in terms of that number of deaths, not everyone goes to hospice. So what happened is that when they identify that someone has, unfortunately, most likely, like less than 6 months to live, then they start enrolling them to this program. And the idea is to provide, as much palliative care, as much care in terms of making sure that they're comfortable and that they're able to kind of live like a respectful end of life until the end. So, with that being said, the number should be less than that, right? So the number should be less than that. And what I've seen in our patients is that most of the time when they are able to enroll in hospice, it doesn't take, unfortunately, they don't use that program for a while. It only takes about a few a few weeks, even sometimes a few days, that they are in this program, and then unfortunately they pass. So when I was listening to the news and this last people that the federal government arrested, that they said that almost more than 90% of the people that are enrolled in this hospice program is not dying. That's of course a red flag. So when we look at that, we're like, hey, that's kind of weird. But like I know that there's more to the story, so that's why I've been kind of doing like a lot more research, because everyone would be able to see, that should not be the case. So right now, like all the data is coming out because they've been doing research, and they are estimating about, I think, 3.5 billion in terms of fraud for hospice care. But one of the things is that when Nick Shirley was doing the investigation, when he's going through the places the offices where um, they conduct the hospice, where the hospice are based. I love Nick Shirley, by the way. I think what he did or what he's doing is great, and I think he was able to spotlight like a lot of these things, and I'm so proud of him. Not just him. I saw a few more people that's been doing either some type of investigative journalism, or like spreading this online, which is really good, because I think with the advancement in technology, that's one of the things that we can that we're able to explore, is that regular people who are smart and brave, doing their part to get the truth out there. But going back, so hospice, I think when people are looking at the hospice fraud or the investigations, um, they're thinking that, hey, that it's probably a scam, or it's probably a fraud because these buildings are empty. I guess what I want to say on that end as a nurse is that it's most of the time empty. And the reason behind that is that over 90% of hospice care happens in the patient's home. And that's, I guess I would say that's a good thing. It's a good thing because we want them to be able to spend the rest of their, the end of their days in an environment that they're comfortable with. So usually what you do is that you hire nurses or you hire medical professionals, and then they come to the home of the patient, and then they make sure that they're okay and that they're getting their medication, they're not in pain, and they're able to talk about like their needs, and the families too. So it's the transitioning in or the transitioning out, I should say, and so that's what we do. So looking at an empty office doesn't necessarily mean that it's fraud because of that reason. This is not like the learning center from Minnesota, where there's obviously no kids. So it's a little bit harder, I guess, um, to see validity of the company just by looking at how their office are, because a lot of these are like a type of work that you have to travel to the patient's home, which is a good thing. We want them comfortable in their own home. I also want to say, I think I mentioned it in the very beginning, is that one of the things that people don't know is that even before it went really big from a federal perspective, right? We are we were already looking into this. We, as in California. And I know this for a fact because I heard this from the people that actually manages this type of things. I guess the question is, my question as someone who's not involved in the enforcement part, is that what is the actual process? Why did it take so long? I know the secretary, the attorney general for California, Rob Bonta, he was saying how this was already ongoing, and I'm not for the guy or against him, but he was saying that it's already ongoing, and that federal comes in and swoop in. But I mean, they both they both have a point, and it was because I've heard of it. I heard of it being a thing. Um, and then, so from my perspective, like as someone who's kind of trying to look at this critically, I'm trying to gather why. Or first of all, I'm trying to figure out, why is it so slow? Why is the enforcement so slow? Because as I mentioned, I already heard about this like maybe over 6 months ago. So why does it take so long to get these things going? But I guess, as the joke, or unfortunately for government, is that that's how it works. It usually takes forever, for these things. So I'm trying to look for enforcement. Like, who is the department? This is my train of thought. So I just wanted to share with you guys. Like, who is the department that oversees um this type of things, the approval and fraud, right? Like, how do they how what is the process to make sure that there is no potential for abuse? So that's my first question. And I guess what I learned from my research is this. And we're going to keep talking a little bit because I think we were a little bit late. So I think it's okay. Um, the kids don't wake up just yet. And my work is not yet. So I think we have a little time just because it's Monday. But, anyways, so what I realized, or what I found, is that one of the things that makes us, got us here, is that the state is responsible for licensing and monitoring of these establishments when it comes to hospice. So the state is responsible for that. But they don't, the federal one is the one that handles the money. So, even though I think there's still data there. This is why for me, if I win, or I think people should do this. I think whoever wins for governor should do this. I hope. Is that I think this is pretty easily identifiable when you when you hire statisticians, when you hire mathematicians, because the data will shows an increase, which actually did. So if you look at the data, with the estimated fraud of 3.5 billion, according to this, since 2010, the hospice industry, the amount of hospice we have in California, has increased by 1,500%, 1,500%. Those are like huge number. And then the federal ward, they were saying how these people are being used for billing, and they're not dying. Already that there's something off going on. So I think, not surprisingly, I love math, but I really think that if we are able to add like a statistician within the team, that's someone that, like, unbiased, right? They're just looking at the data and they're looking at the pattern, because this pattern seems pretty evident to me from the perspective of the state and from the perspective of federal. So if state only sees the number of application for hospice, or like maybe red flags when they're doing their licensing, and where they're doing their monitoring, then that's one. And then federal too. If they're seeing the amount of money that they've been paying is a lot, then I think that they should have someone. There should be like markers. I don't even think that you need like an actual person, although I think a person to actually review this data is not a bad idea. Just to put parameters of like an alert whenever it meets a certain threshold. Because like I'm looking at the numbers from a lot of different things, from medical, from unemployment data, from like all this data, there's something's wrong. Something's wrong with how these data are being presented. But, we'll talk about that some other day. To go back to hospice, so yes, there's two different areas. So there's the state for enforcement, and then the paying is federal. And then so it's like the left hand doing one thing and the right hand doing another without any coordination. And we see this most of the time in a lot of different branches. There's not a lot of conversation within this government entities, and I'm not sure why that is. And I think that to be able to limit the amount of fraud, this is something that we need to explore. They need to be able to talk like a little bit more in terms of what the other one is going. Share their data. For the private company that I work for, we handle different areas. We talk. we would talk and see what is working for one, what are the risks for one, and then we try to share that knowledge with each other. The same thing when I was taking nursing, when I was in school for nursing, they talk about the nursing manager. The nursing manager needs to have a like a dialogue with other nursing managers in different facilities to see what works for them. And the first time I heard that, this was a decade ago, I thought that that was a very interesting concept because they usually don't tell you to kind of be chummy with people that is like not within your circle, right? But this one, it's like for to lift the nursing profession and for patient care, you need to be able to coordinate with these other people. So it's kind of, I guess, surprising to me that this is not being done in a government entity, that it's very fragmented. Like the way that we move within the system is pretty isolated. Even within the state, even within federal, it seems like it's always like fragmented, and they kind of do their own thing without much collaboration. I want to say also, when it comes to this hospice fraud, the second thing is that we really need to have like a better way of enforcement. Like it's really very sad that the way and the penalty should be significant, because when I heard of this issue over 6 months ago, it was shared to us that there's people, as you can see in the news, there's people that owns multiple hospices, like one person or one group, and they own so much. And it's weird. It's like, why don't you just want to, I mean, it's yours, it's on the same area. Why split it? It's so odd. But it is to, I guess, to avoid suspicion. It's so easy to, I guess, commit fraud. And I want to share that, I guess, when they were talking to that person, they were very brave, and they actually told the people that are checking that, hey, I don't really care if you close my place, then I'll just move back home. And I won't say what home is, but they're referring to a different country that unfortunately we don't have that that agreement to send them back or to make them pay for their crimes that they did in the US, which I think is kind of sad. But no one, this is America, and this is California. No one should be able to just kind of look you in the eye and say that for a government official. At least that's my perspective. If someone is able to look at us and say that boldly, that's like, oh, I don't care if you close me down, I'll just go home. And then, I think that's not cool. Sorry, someone's smoking, and it's not cool. But anyways, so with that being said, we need better coordination. We need better process of identification for the fraud, coordination between different departments and different levels, federal, state, otherwise. We need a better way of like handling these people that are committing these offenses, and we need a better way of they shouldn't be able to say that. That's like super insulting. Again, this is America. And then, I do want to add a few more minutes. I'm going to take a few more of your time to talk about the Stop Nick Shirley Act. It's very clever the way that they, the way that they made made that title. I think it's the right people made this title because I've been looking into it because I'm trying to understand. I don't want to just jump in the bandwagon, and I want to understand what this bill is about, and if there's just a misinterpretation of what the bill is. But unfortunately, just the timing seems off. The timing seems really off, and then the person that has presented it is also, it just feels wrong, I guess. So for those of you who don't know, there's a bill that's currently going through like California, and the right is terming it Stop Nick Shirley Act. And what it is that it's weird too, because it's saying, companies that provide services to immigrants will be protected. But I was like, but why not just protect everyone, all the companies? I don't see why we need that distinction, I guess. But that's just me personally. But with that, what they're saying is that it's going to be punishable by fees, like money or jail time, when you're posting picture of a place or employees. And it's not even, and they're talking about protecting them from doxing. And that one is logical, of course. But when I heard this bill, I was thinking there's already very strict rules for which is a good thing in terms of doxing in California, privacy in California. There's already a lot of that. So I was a little bit curious why we need an additional bill specifically for this. But I guess the argument is that they're talking about doxing in the form of image. So that means even the face is not allowed to be shown. And I guess their idea is that, they want to protect the employees. But the thing though is that this sound like infringement of the right for journalists to be able to investigate. So I don't know how it's gonna work, and I don't know how far it's gonna go. But it's pretty cool that the people on the right are able to identify this right away. I don't hear a strong defend of the bill from the people from the left who presented this. I just don't see the point outside of sorry, outside of trying to discourage this type of reporting, which, as I mentioned in the first few minutes, that I actually really support and really love. I think the people that are courageous enough and passionate enough to offer some of their resources and their strength and their time to conduct these type of things are pretty good. I mean, you don't have to take it 100%. You still need to, of course, use your own judgment and do your own research. But for the most part, it's exposing things that is not that we didn't know before. So I think that's a positive thing. So I am curious on how this will work. And I think it was bad judgment that the girl that put this bill out there is the wife of the attorney general for California. That relationship was a little bit odd because it seems, I mean, I guess that's part of her job, but there's a lot of people in the assembly, so I'm not sure why it has to be her during this time, during the height of the investigation. I don't believe in doxing at all. I think people should have, should be protected from that. As I mentioned, we have currently existing laws to prevent that. But for the most part, I think that this journalists, they're independent journalists. I think they're doing a great job, and we shouldn't stop them. Unless that there is like really malicious way where they're saying, oh, this is Christine and this is blah 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 and this is where she lives, this is where she works. We should, like make her life hard. That one's a little bit different, but for the most part, I think they're doing a good job for the community. So I think they should continue doing what they do. And I don't know, I know he's very busy, but if he's listening, Nick Shirley, I think you're doing a phenomenal job, and thank you for providing all that data, for us, and thank you for showing us the things that it's not so, I guess, easy to see, and for following actually like little tips here and there that you're hearing from people, because we need that. We need people like you. So just want to give a quick shout out to him, to Nick Shirley. Keep doing great work and stay safe. And you guys don't smoke. It's not good. It's not good for you, and it's not good for the people around you. But anyways, I think that's it. Sorry again that I'm late. I didn't finish my coffee again. And tomorrow we'll talk some more. But thank you for listening. And if you guys have any questions, and any thoughts and perspective or additional input about the topic, please put a comment on the bottom, and I'll answer. I read them all. So yeah, I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a beautiful day. Have a beautiful week. And I'll see you tomorrow for Coffee with Christine. Bye. Cheers.